Your sister's graduation is more important than your surgery, Mom said. Years later, my sister proudly announced her new hospital job. At orientation, I walked in as the chief of surgery, and the whole room went silent. Can you imagine being told, not just by anyone, but by your own mother, that your life-saving surgery was less important than your sister's high school graduation? That was the brutal reality I faced, a betrayal so deep it shattered me, forcing me to build my entire life from nothing, only to have the past come crashing back into my world years later, in the most unexpected and utterly shocking way. Let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Nathan Mitchell, and by the age of 32, I had become the youngest chief of surgery at Boston Memorial, a journey I'd built from the ground up. But my path was anything but ordinary. From the time I was 11, my world revolved around hospitals due to a chronic kidney condition. While most kids dreamed of playing street hockey and becoming the next sports star in our suburban Boston neighborhood, my dreams quickly became about surviving. My father, Robert Mitchell, was my unwavering hero. A high school science teacher, his passion for knowledge was infectious. He'd bring home old medical journals, and I, even as a kid, would pore over them, utterly fascinated. He was the one who noticed the fatigue and swelling, the one who insisted on a doctor's visit when my mother, Margaret, brushed it off as me drinking too much soda. That appointment changed everything. Chronic glomerulonephritis, the doctor pronounced, a word that sounded impossibly long to my 11-year-old ears. A kidney condition, requiring long-term management and possibly surgeries. I remember Dad's hand tightening around mine, a silent promise of support. But Mom's face? It hardened. Looking back, I realized that was the moment her perception of me shifted. My illness wasn't just a challenge, it was an inconvenience in her meticulously planned life. My younger sister, Amanda, 9 at the time, was already the golden child. Perfect report cards, spelling bee trophies, violin recitals. She excelled effortlessly. While I spent countless hours at doctor's appointments, Mom devoted herself to Amanda's accomplishments. Your sister has such potential, she'd often say, the unspoken message hanging heavy in the air. Amanda had potential, I had problems. Dad tried to bridge the chasm growing between us. He drove me to appointments, sat through long waits, and nurtured my burgeoning interest in medicine. You understand this stuff better than some of my students, he'd beam, listening as I explained. Kidney function. You might make a fine doctor someday. Those words, whispered in sterile waiting rooms, became my compass. My first surgery came at 14. My kidneys were deteriorating rapidly. Mom was there for consultations, but it was Dad who slept in that unforgiving recliner by my hospital bed for 3 long nights. Mom, she had responsibilities at home with Amanda. Yet, those frightening hospital stays ignited something in me. I watched the doctors, mesmerized. Dr. Lawson, my nephrologist, noticed my curiosity. You ask better questions than most medical students, she told me, and in that moment, a fire was lit. I decided right then, I would become a surgeon. If I had to be in hospitals, I would make it count. High school was a brutal balancing act. Academic rigor despite constant absences for treatments. Dad was my steadfast tutor, helping me maintain a 4.0 GPA. He'd celebrate every perfect report card, proudly taping it to the fridge. Mom, she'd glance, utter a dismissive, "That's nice," and return to whatever of Amanda's achievements currently held her attention. By 16, I developed a coping mechanism, achievement as validation. If I could just be successful enough, maybe Mom would finally see me as more than just a medical burden. I dove into science clubs, winning the state science competition with a project on kidney disease treatments, earning a small scholarship. Dad framed the certificate. A week later, Mom moved it to the hallway. My condition worsened. Medications brought side effects, weight gain, a puffy face. Some kids called me Marshmallow Man, but I buried myself in my studies, clinging to a small, loyal group of friends and, more importantly, to Dad. He was my emotional anchor. You're going to make a difference, Nathan, he'd tell me. Your challenges are giving you a compassion that will make you an extraordinary doctor. I clung to those words through the pain, the nausea, the procedures, and my mother's growing indifference. I was building a resilience I didn't yet know I desperately need. Senior year was supposed to be a triumph. Accepted into several pre-med programs with scholarships, my future was finally taking shape. My kidney function had even stabilized. Dad and I were cautiously optimistic. Then, in April, just 2 months before graduation, my world imploded. A mild fever escalated into an emergency. Within 48 hours, I was in the ER, kidneys failing rapidly. Nathan needs surgery immediately, Dr. Lawson told my parents. I was barely conscious, but Mom's voice cut through the pain meds like a shard of ice. But the timing is terrible. Amanda's high school graduation is next week. Dr. Lawson, usually composed, sharpened her tone. Mrs. Mitchell, Nathan's health is at critical risk. Mom pushed. Surely, it can wait. A few days. Amanda has worked so hard. My mild-mannered father exploded. Are you serious, Margaret? Our son could die. The argument raged, but one statement pierced through the haze with agonizing clarity. Mom, thinking I was asleep, said it. Your sister's graduation is more important than your surgery. Amanda deserves to have her moment without this overshadowing everything. Those words were a knife, carving a wound deeper than any surgeon's scalpel ever could. In that moment, I understood. I was an inconvenience. My existence, a disruption to her perfect family vision. Dad's fury was instant. How dare you? One is a ceremony that can be recorded. The other is our son's life. The surgery was begrudgingly scheduled for the day after Amanda's graduation. The atmosphere at home that week was toxic. Dad slept in my room, barely speaking to Mom. Amanda, caught in the middle, visited me in the hospital. I told Mom I could skip, she whispered. Don't. I replied, too hurt, too proud to accept the gesture. Go enjoy your perfect day. She looked conflicted but ultimately went. Later, I'd learned Mom had convinced her there was nothing she could do, that it would only ruin her special day. On Amanda's graduation day, I lay alone in my hospital room. My own cap sat on the bedside table. I wouldn't be attending my ceremony the following week. When Dad returned that evening, his face was a thundercloud. Your mother wanted me to stay for the entire family dinner, he said, his voice tight. I left after an hour. Amanda sent her love. I just nodded, the betrayal. Too fresh, too raw. The next day's surgery was brutal, 7 hours of complicated work. When I woke, only Dad was there. Mom, I asked, already knowing. There's a brunch for Amanda, he said, avoiding my eyes. Post-surgery, I developed a severe infection, leading to 2 more weeks in the hospital. Dad took leave. Mom visited twice, briefly, always checking her watch, talking about what she was missing with Amanda. During those long, agonizing days, I made a decision that would reshape my entire life. Once discharged, I would cut all ties with my mother and sister. The wound was too deep. The message too clear. I was less important, less valuable, less worthy of love. Dad, heartbroken, supported me. You need to do what's right for your healing, Nathan, he said. 3 months later, he helped me move into my dorm. Mom and Amanda didn't come. The divorce proceedings had already begun. Dad couldn't forgive her. Neither could I. Unpacking in that tiny dorm, I made a silent vow. I would never again allow anyone to make me feel like an inconvenience. I would build a life so successful, a career so undeniable, that no one, especially not her, could ever dismiss me again. College was terrifying, but profoundly liberating. For the first time, I was truly on my own. My roommate, Derek, a computer science major, didn't bat an eye at my medications or dialysis appointments. Everyone's got their stuff, he'd shrug, a refreshing acceptance after years of being treated as either fragile or inconvenient. Dad called often, worried, but we never spoke of Mom or Amanda. He'd occasionally let slip an update. Your sister started at Northeastern nursing program. The bitter irony wasn't lost on me. Amanda, who couldn't sit with me during a life-threatening crisis, wanted to be a nurse. I just changed the subject. Finances were tight after the divorce. My scholarship covered tuition, but medical expenses were a constant drain. I took a 20-hour-a-week library job, despite my new nephrologist's concerns. I need to stay in school and pay for my medications, I insisted. Those first 2 years were a grueling test of endurance. Classes, work, dialysis 3 times a week, then studying until I collapsed. But slowly, I built a new life. I found friends in my science classes. Serious, ambitious students who respected my drive. Elena, a biochemistry major, became my rock. You're not defined by your kidneys or your family, she told me. You're defined by what you do with the challenges you're given. Her words became another mantra. Elena, Derek, and a few others became my chosen family. We celebrated holidays, shared meals, supported each other. I excelled, earning a research position and making the dean's list. Dr. Whitman, my cellular biology professor, became a pivotal mentor. When I confided my dream of becoming a surgeon, she didn't dismiss it despite my health challenges. Medicine needs doctors who understand illness from the inside, she said. Your experience gives you insight. That can't be taught. With her guidance, I applied to a special medical school program at Massachusetts General. To my shock and joy, I was accepted with a full scholarship. When I called, "Dad," he cried. "I always knew you could do it," he choked out. "I'm so damn proud." Medical school was even more demanding, but my health had stabilized. I developed a routine for managing dialysis and meds. I was still tired, still had pain, but I pushed through. In my second year, something extraordinary happened. A compatible kidney donor was found. The transplant surgery was scheduled quickly, and this time, Dad was there for every step, taking a month off work to help me recover. The transplant changed everything. My energy soared. For the first time since childhood, I functioned without constant fatigue and pain. I dove deeper into my studies, specializing in pediatric surgery, driven by a desire to help children facing challenges like mine. I had a natural rapport with young patients. "You don't talk to us like we're stupid," a 12-year-old with leukemia once told me. "I know exactly how that feels," I replied. When I was your age, I was in and out of hospitals, too. This unique connection, combined with my surgical skill, set me apart. Dr. Kaplan, the chief of pediatric surgery, became another mentor. "You have exceptional hands, Mitchell," he observed, "but more importantly, exceptional empathy. That combination is rare." With his recommendation, I secured a prestigious surgical residency at Boston Children's. Those 5 years of residency were brutal. 100-hour weeks, sleepless nights, relentless pressure. But I thrived. My past struggles had inadvertently prepared me. Throughout these years, contact with my mother and sister remained non-existent. Dad gave me minimal updates. Mom had moved. Amanda was working as a nurse at Massachusetts General. But I had no desire to reconnect. The wound of that betrayal had scarred over, but it hadn't truly healed. I channeled that lingering pain into ambition, using it as fuel, pushing myself further and faster. Part of me, I'll admit, was still driven by a fierce need to prove my worth, to show my mother how profoundly wrong she had been to dismiss me. My personal life took a back seat. I built walls around my heart that few could penetrate. An engagement to a pediatric oncologist, Stephanie, during my chief resident year fizzled. "You're never going to let anyone completely in," she said sadly. Returning the ring. Part of you is always holding back, waiting for the other person to let you down. She wasn't wrong. Trust was hard-won for me now. By 30, I had completed my residency and a fellowship in pediatric transplant surgery. My reputation as a skilled surgeon with exceptional bedside manner was spreading. I published papers, drawing on both my medical training and personal experience. Then, at 32, the crowning achievement. Boston Memorial Hospital, a leading transplant center, offered me the position of chief of surgery, the youngest in the hospital's history. When I called Dad with the news, his pride was palpable. "You did it, Nathan," he choked out. "Against every obstacle, you did it." I moved to a new apartment, ready for this next chapter. What I didn't know was that fate had a cruel, ironic twist waiting for me, one that would drag me back to the very past I had spent 14 years trying to outrun. The morning of my first official orientation as chief of surgery, I arrived at 6 a.m., ready to prepare. My new office, spacious, with my name on the door, still felt surreal. I spent an hour reviewing the files of the new surgical staff. Halfway through the stack, a name jumped out at me like it was printed in neon. Amanda Mitchell. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. It had to be a coincidence. But as I scanned the file, the details confirmed my worst fear. Graduated Northeastern nursing, previous experience at Mass General, specialized in surgical nursing. It was her. My sister was joining my hospital as the new surgical nursing director. For a moment, a primal urge to call HR, to have her application revoked, surged through me. But I knew that would be unethical, legally problematic, and would mean acknowledging our connection. No, I would handle this professionally. Boston Memorial was a huge hospital. Perhaps our paths wouldn't cross often. At 9 a.m. sharp, I entered the conference room where 30 new staff members waited. I was in full chief of surgery mode, confident, authoritative, respected. My custom-tailored suit and the gravitas I'd cultivated gave no hint of the anxious teenager I once was. Good morning, I began. I am Dr. Nathan Mitchell, chief of surgery at Boston Memorial. Welcome to what I believe is the finest surgical department on the East Coast. As I continued my welcome speech, my eyes scanned the room and locked with an all-too-familiar pair. Amanda sat in the second row, her face drained of color. She looked different. 14 years will do that. But the resemblance to our mother was stronger now, her blonde hair cut in a professional bob, her posture perfect, as always. The moment stretched between us like an eternity, though it was probably only a second or two. I continued speaking without missing a beat, but the room had gone notably quiet as people sensed the sudden tension. You'll find that we maintain exceptionally high standards here. I continued, breaking eye contact with Amanda and addressing the entire room. We expect excellence, dedication, and absolute professionalism from every member of our team. I emphasized that last word slightly, a message intended for one person in particular. Throughout the 3-hour orientation, I maintained perfect composure, discussing surgical protocols and my expectations. I didn't single Amanda out. When the session ended, people approached me with questions. I could see Amanda hovering at the edge of the group. When the crowd thinned, she finally approached. Dr. Mitchell, she said formally, extending her hand. Amanda Mitchell, the new surgical nursing director. It's a pleasure to meet you. So that was how she wanted to play it. Fine by me, Miss Mitchell, I replied, shaking her hand briefly. Welcome to Boston Memorial. I trust you'll find everything in order. If you have any questions, my assistant can direct you. Her eyes searched mine for any hint of recognition or emotion, but my professional mask was impenetrable. She looked like she wanted to say more, but I turned to answer another new hire, effectively dismissing her. Walking back to my office, Dr. Sarah Levine, a sharp cardiothoracic surgeon, fell into step beside me. So, she said casually, that was interesting. What was that? I kept my voice neutral. Oh, come on, Nathan. The temperature dropped 20 degrees when you and the new nursing director made eye contact. Same last name, too. Relative. I sighed. Sarah was too perceptive and too valued a colleague to lie to. Sister, I admitted once we were in my office. We haven't spoken in 14 years. Sarah whistled low. That's going to make department meetings awkward. It won't be an issue, I said firmly. I'm a professional. I can work with anyone. Of course you can, she agreed. But family complications have a way of seeping into professional spaces, no matter how thick the walls we build. Her words proved prophetic sooner than I expected. That afternoon, I received an email from Amanda requesting a meeting to discuss surgical nursing protocols. I knew it was an excuse, but I couldn't refuse a meeting with a department head. I scheduled it for the end of the day, giving myself time to prepare emotionally. At 5:45 p.m., there was a soft knock. Come in, I called. Not looking up from the surgical journal I was pretending to read. Amanda entered, closing the door. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I finally looked up. Have a seat, Miss Mitchell, I said, gesturing to the chair. Nathan, she said softly. This is crazy. Can we please talk? Like normal people, like family? We have a professional relationship, Miss Mitchell, I replied. Coolly. I'm your superior. That's the extent of our connection. She flinched, but didn't back down. I had no idea you worked here when I applied. I just knew Boston Memorial had an excellent surgical department. Finding out you were the chief of Surgery was a shock, as it was for me to see your name on the new hire list. I acknowledged. But what's done is done. I expect you to maintain absolute professionalism. Our personal history has no place in this hospital. So that's it. Her voice rose slightly. 14 years of silence. And now we're just going to pretend we don't know each other? Would you prefer I have your transfer request processed? I asked coldly. Because I can arrange that, if you find the situation untenable. She looked at me, hurt evident in her eyes. You've changed, she finally said. Yes, I agreed. I have. Now, did you actually have questions about surgical nursing protocols, or was this meeting merely a pretext? Amanda visibly composed herself. Actually, I do have legitimate questions about the transplant protocols. They differ somewhat from what we used at Mass General. Fine, I said, pulling out the documentation. Let's discuss them. For the next 30 minutes, we had a perfectly professional conversation. Anyone observing would have seen two colleagues discussing work matters. No hint of the emotional hurricane beneath the surface. As she gathered her notes, Amanda paused at the door. For what? It's worth, Nathan, she said quietly. I've spent 14 years regretting what happened. I hope someday you'll let me explain my side of things. I didn't respond. She left. Alone, I let out a long breath and ran my hands over my face. I had thought this chapter was closed, the book shelved away. Now, it had been pulled down, dusted off, and reopened to the most painful pages. That night, I called Dad. Amanda's working at my hospital, I said without preamble. There was a pause. I know, he finally said. She told me she had applied, but didn't know you were the chief until she was hired. Did you know? I couldn't keep the accusation from my voice. No, Nathan, Dad said firmly. I would never have kept that from you. You know that. I didn't know that. Dad had never been anything but honest. What am I supposed to do? I asked, feeling like that 18-year-old boy again. What you always do, he replied simply. Be your best. You're a professional, Nathan. You can handle this. After hanging up, I stood at my apartment window, looking at the Boston skyline. Dad was right. I could handle this professionally. What I wasn't sure about was handling it emotionally. Seeing Amanda had ripped open wounds I thought had long since scarred over. The coming months would test both my professional composure and my emotional resilience in ways I couldn't yet imagine. For 3 weeks, Amanda and I maintained our professional facade. We interacted when necessary, always cordial, always appropriate. If the staff noticed anything unusual, they were too professional to mention it. I thought I had the situation under control. Then, a particularly challenging case came into the ER, a 10-year-old boy with severe kidney trauma after a car accident. I was called in for emergency surgery, and Amanda was the nursing director on duty. We worked side by side for 7 grueling hours, fighting to save the boy's kidney, and ultimately, his life. The case was too complex, too demanding for personal tensions to interfere. We functioned as a seamless team, anticipating each other's needs, communicating with silent understanding. When we finally stabilized the child, Amanda and I found ourselves alone in the surgical scrub room, the adrenaline of the successful surgery still coursing through our veins. You're an exceptional surgeon, she said quietly as we washed up. That boy would have lost his kidney in less skilled hands. You're a good surgical nurse, I replied, the compliment escaping. Before I could stop it, your team was well prepared. A small, sad smile touched her lips. We always did work well together as kids. Remember that science fair project in 5th grade? The volcano that actually worked. The unexpected memory caught me off guard. For a brief moment, I saw not the nursing director, but the little sister who had once followed me around adoringly, before our mother's favoritism poisoned everything. That was a long time ago, I said, shutting down the moment of vulnerability. I dried my hands and left. That night, I couldn't sleep. The surgery, the brief connection with Amanda, the memories it stirred, all of it left me restless. Around midnight, I gave up and went to the hospital to check on our young patient. I was reviewing his chart when I heard footsteps. Amanda approached, still in her scrubs. Couldn't sleep either? She asked. I shook my head. Wanted to check his kidney function numbers. They're improving, she said. I just looked in on him. He's stable. We stood in awkward silence for a moment. The The hospital was quiet, just the soft beeping of monitors. Nathan, Amanda finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. We need to talk. Really talk. Not as chief of surgery and nursing director, as brother and sister. I should have refused. I should have maintained the professional boundary. But the exhaustion, the emotional toll, perhaps even the success of saving that boy's kidney, something made me nod. My office, I said. 5 minutes. In the privacy of my office, with the door closed and the late hour ensuring no interruptions, 14 years of silence finally broke open. I've tried to contact you, Amanda began. So many times over the years. Letters, emails, messages through Dad. I never received anything, I stated flatly. I know that now, she replied. Mom intercepted everything. The letters were returned, the emails blocked. I didn't find out until years later when I was going through her things and found a box with all my unopened letters to you. I stared, trying to process this. Why would she do that? Because she couldn't face what she had done, Amanda said, her eyes filling with tears. And because she knew I was angry with her for how she treated you. She was afraid I would take your side completely if we remained in contact. So you did. Recognize how wrong it was. I said, a question and an accusation wrapped into one. Yes, Amanda admitted. Not right away. I was a self-centered teenager, and Mom was very good at manipulating the narrative. But by college, I had perspective. I tried to find you to apologize, but you had cut all ties. I leaned back, studying her face. She looked genuinely distressed, but 14 years of hurt and anger couldn't be erased by one conversation. Even if what you're saying is true, I said. Carefully, it doesn't change what happened. You were there. You could have stood up for me. No, she whispered. That's my greatest regret. I was 16, caught between Mom's manipulation and my own selfish desires to have a perfect graduation. By the time I realized how deeply wrong it was, you were gone. She pulled a manila envelope from her bag. These are some of the letters I wrote you. Dad gave me your college address, but they always came back. Now I know why. I took the envelope, but didn't open it. Why are you telling me this now? What do you want from me, Amanda? She took a deep breath. There's something else you need to know. The real reason I came to Boston Memorial. She paused, gathering her courage. Mom is dying. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. She has maybe 6 months. The news hit me like a physical blow. Despite everything, the years of anger, the deep hurt, hearing that the woman who had given me life was dying stirred complex emotions I wasn't prepared for. I'm sorry to hear that, I said stiffly. She wants to see you, Amanda continued. To apologize before it's too late. She's been in therapy for years, Nathan. She recognizes how terribly she failed you. I stood abruptly, walking to the window. So that's why you're here. To play messenger and peacemaker. Partly, Amanda admitted, but also because I needed to make things right between us regardless of Mom. I became a nurse because of you. Did you know that? Watching what you went through, seeing how the good nurses made such a difference, it shaped my entire career path. I turned to look at her, truly seeing her for the first time. She wasn't the spoiled teenager anymore, nor our mother's puppet. She was a grown woman, accomplished in her own right, carrying her own regrets. I need time to process all this, I finally said. 14 years of anger doesn't disappear in one conversation. I understand, she said, standing. But, Nathan, we work together now. Could we at least try to build some kind of relationship? Even if you never want to see Mom again, could you consider forgiving me? I didn't have an answer. As she left, I stood holding the envelope, wondering if reading the letters would heal old wounds or just reopen them. That night, I called Dad again. Did you know Mom is dying? I asked. Yes, he said heavily. Amanda told me a few months ago. And you didn't tell me? I couldn't keep the hurt from my voice. I was waiting for the right time, Nathan, Dad sighed. And truthfully, I wasn't sure you would want to know. Your mother hurt you deeply. I've never minimized that or asked you to forgive her. Amanda says Mom wants to see me. That's your decision, Dad said. Whatever you choose, I'll support you. Just make sure it's what you really want, not what you think you should do. After we hung up, I opened the envelope Amanda had given me. Inside were dozens of letters, spanning 14 years. From the barely coherent apologies of a guilt-ridden teenager to the measured reflections of a woman trying to understand her role in a family tragedy. Reading them into the early morning hours, I began to see a different perspective on our shared past. I didn't know if I could forgive either Amanda or our mother, but for the first time in 14 years, I was willing to consider the possibility that there was more to the story than just my pain and their betrayal. Over the next several months, Amanda and I settled into an uneasy truce. Our professional interactions became less strained, though still formal. I hadn't decided about meeting our mother, and Amanda didn't push, though I knew time was running short. What I hadn't anticipated was Amanda's exceptional skill as a surgical nursing director. She implemented innovative protocols that improved patient outcomes. Her staff respected her, and other department heads praised her work. A part of me, a petty, wounded part one wasn't proud of, felt threatened by her success. After all, I had defined myself by my achievements, by proving I was worthy despite my mother's rejection. Seeing Amanda excel in the same hospital stirred complicated feelings of competition and resentment. Things came to a head during a departmental review meeting. Amanda presented a new recovery protocol for pediatric transplant patients, my specialty. The data showed reduced complication rates by 15%. "This is excellent work, Miss Mitchell," Dr. Levine commented. "Dr. Mitchell, have you reviewed these findings? This could significantly impact your pediatric transplant outcomes." All eyes turned to me. I had reviewed Amanda's protocol and knew it was sound, possibly even groundbreaking. Professional integrity demanded I acknowledge this, regardless of personal feelings. "I have," I said evenly. "The protocol is well designed and the data compelling. I recommend we implement it immediately in the pediatric transplant unit." Amanda looked genuinely surprised. After the meeting, she approached me. "Thank you for supporting the protocol," she said. "I wasn't sure you would." "I'm a doctor first," I replied. "Personal feelings don't factor into medical decisions." She studied me for a moment. "Would you be willing to collaborate on the implementation? Your expertise would be invaluable." The request was reasonable. Refusing would. For years. "Why did you make that choice?" She looked away, her hands fidgeting with the edge of her blanket. "I've spent years in therapy trying to understand it myself," she said quietly. "Some of it was about control. Your illness was something I couldn't fix, couldn't manage. It terrified me. And instead of facing that fear, I turned away from it, from you." She met my eyes again, and some of it was my own inadequacy. Amanda was easy to parent. She followed rules, met expectations. You were challenging, brilliant, complicated, dealing with adult problems as a child. I didn't know how to be what you needed. "So, you decided not to try at all," I said, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "Yes," she admitted. "It was cruel and inexcusable. When your father left me, it was a wake-up call. I realized I had destroyed our family with my choices." She reached for a glass of water, her hand shaking. I found myself automatically helping her, steadying the glass, a doctor's instinct. "Thank you," she murmured. "Amanda tells me you're a brilliant surgeon, chief of surgery at Boston Memorial, and you work with children who have conditions like yours." "I do. That seems fitting. Taking your pain and using it to help others." She paused. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, Nathan. I don't deserve it, and I know it's too much to expect. I just wanted a chance to tell you that I recognize the harm I caused, that I'm deeply sorry for it, and that I have always loved you, even when I failed completely at showing it." I sat in silence, absorbing her words. The anger that had fueled me for so long felt different now, faced with this frail woman acknowledging her failures. It didn't disappear. 14 years of hurt couldn't be erased in one conversation, but it shifted, becoming something less consuming. "I can't promise forgiveness," I finally said, "but I can promise that I'll try to let go of some of the anger. It hasn't served me well carrying it all these years." Relief washed over her face. "That's more than I hoped for," she said softly. "Thank you for coming, Nathan. It means everything to see the man you've become despite my failings." I stayed for another hour. Our conversation was tentative, navigating years of absence, but there were moments of genuine connection. She asked about my work, listened attentively to descriptions of challenging surgeries, expressed pride in my accomplishments that felt sincere. Before leaving, I told her I would return, perhaps with Amanda next time. It wasn't full reconciliation, but it was a beginning. Over the next 2 months, I visited regularly, sometimes with Amanda, sometimes alone. Each visit built a fragile bridge across the chasm of our past. I learned things about my mother I had never known, her own difficult childhood, her struggles with anxiety and depression that had gone untreated for decades, her regrets that extended far beyond her treatment of me. During one visit, when she was having a good day, she asked about my kidney transplant. Amanda told me you received a transplant in medical school, she said. That must have been life-changing. It was, I replied, though I still take anti-rejection medications and always will. She was quiet. For a moment. An apt metaphor, perhaps, she said thoughtfully. Even when we receive something life-saving, we must work to not reject it. The insight surprised me, and I found myself nodding in agreement. As her condition deteriorated, our conversations became less about the past and more about simple presence. I would sit with her, sometimes reading aloud from books, sometimes just keeping her company. Amanda and I often coordinated our visits, developing a schedule that ensured one of us was there regularly. One afternoon, after a particularly peaceful visit, Amanda and I went for coffee in the hospice garden. Thank you for giving her this chance, Amanda said. It's meant everything to her. I did it as much for myself, I admitted. And for you too. Carrying that anger was exhausting. She smiled. Either way, it's been healing for all of us. Our mother passed away peacefully 3 months after my first visit. Dad attended the small funeral, standing supportively beside Amanda and me as we received condolences. His presence there, the ex-husband supporting his children through the loss of the woman who had hurt them, all spoke volumes about his character. In the months that followed, Amanda and I continued to build our relationship, both professional and personal. We established a weekly dinner tradition, sometimes joined by Dad. During these meals, we gradually filled in the 14-year gap in our knowledge of each other's lives. I learned about Amanda's own struggles, living under our mother's excessive expectations, her failed marriage to a controlling man who reminded her too much of Mom, her journey through therapy to understand her role in our family's dysfunction. She learned about my medical challenges, my friendships, my brief engagement, and my ambitions. At work, our professional partnership flourished. The protocol we had developed together yielded impressive results, drawing attention from other hospitals. We were invited to co-present at a major medical conference, our complementary expertise creating a compelling presentation that received considerable acclaim. One evening, after a particularly successful surgery on a child with a complex kidney condition, Amanda suggested an idea that would change both our lives. We should start a foundation, she said, for children with kidney disease, combining cutting-edge medical care with support for the whole family. The idea resonated immediately. A foundation that treats not just the medical condition, but the family dynamics that are affected by chronic childhood illness, I elaborated, thinking of my own experience. Exactly, Amanda nodded enthusiastically. We've lived both sides of it. We could make a real difference. Within 6 months, the Mitchell Foundation for Pediatric Kidney Health was established, funded initially by a portion of our mother's estate. A fitting use for the money, transforming the legacy of family pain into something healing and hopeful. The foundation work brought Amanda and me even closer, our shared purpose healing old wounds in ways therapy alone never could. Dad joined the board, contributing his educator's perspective. My personal life began to flourish. I started dating Dr. Rachel Chun, a pediatric psychologist who worked with our foundation. Her understanding of childhood trauma and family dynamics helped me continue my own healing journey. For the first time, I found myself able to truly open up to someone about all aspects of my past, without fear of judgment or abandonment. 1 year after our mother's passing, Amanda, Dad, and I scattered her ashes in a garden overlooking the ocean, her favorite place. The ceremony was brief but meaningful, an acknowledgement of a complicated relationship that had caused deep pain but ultimately led to growth and healing. She would be proud of what you two have created together, Dad said as we watched the waves. Not that her pride should be your motivation, he added quickly. You've built something extraordinary on your own terms. Not entirely on our own, I replied, putting an arm around his shoulders. We had an excellent example of what true parental support looks like. Later that evening, sitting on my apartment balcony with Amanda, watching the Boston skyline glitter against the night sky, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. Do you ever think about how different things might have been, she asked, if Mom had made different choices? Back then, sometimes, I admitted. But then I might not have become a surgeon. You might not have become a nurse. We wouldn't have the foundation. Some good has come from the pain, as hard as that is to reconcile. She nodded thoughtfully. I've learned that healing doesn't mean forgetting or excusing what happened. It means finding a way to carry it that doesn't destroy you. Maybe even finding a way to transform it into something meaningful. Exactly, I agreed. And understanding that forgiveness isn't a single moment, but a process. Some days I still feel angry about what happened. Other days I feel compassion for Mom and the struggles she never overcame. Both can be true simultaneously. As we sat in companionable silence, I thought about the 18-year-old boy in that hospital bed, hearing those devastating words from his mother, feeling abandoned and worthless. I wished I could tell him that though the road ahead would be difficult, it would eventually lead to a place of purpose, success, and even healing. That the wound would never fully disappear, but it would become part of a larger, richer life story. The journey from betrayal to healing had been long and painful, but sitting there with my sister, I felt a sense of peace I had not thought possible. Not because the past had been erased, or because all hurts had been perfectly resolved, but because I had finally learned to carry my history without being defined by it. If you've ever experienced family betrayal or felt invisible in your own home, I hope my story offers some comfort. The path to healing isn't straight or simple, but it is possible. Sometimes the deepest wounds lead to the most profound growth. Remember, your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, but by the strength and compassion you find within yourself.